$33 million. That is what MC Hammer earned in a single year at the height of his fame. In 1996, he filed for bankruptcy. Not because the money stopped, because by the time it did, he had already spent $33 million, and then some 200 people on his personal payroll, 17 cars, a $12 million mansion with its own baseball diamond. And here is the thing: the bankruptcy filing listed debts of $13.7 million. Monthly payroll alone, up to $1 million. Every single month. That nobody talks about. Every single one of those decisions made complete sense to him at the time. That is not a story about stupidity. That is not a story about greed. That is a story about a psychological trap so ancient, so perfectly designed, that a Roman philosopher identified it 2,000 years ago and wrote down the exact escape plan. Stay with me, because by the end of this video you are going to recognize this trap in your own finances. And you are going to have the only tool that actually breaks it. Stanley Kirk Burrell grew up in the Acorn Projects in Oakland, California. His family had very little. His father dealt cards for a living. As a teenager, Stanley worked as a bat boy for the Oakland Athletics. Running errands, carrying equipment, watching from the edges of a world he wanted to be part of. The players gave him a nickname, Little Hammer, after Hank Aaron. The name stuck. In 1987, he scraped together $12,000. Borrowed from 2 baseball players who believed in him. Pressed his own records and sold them from the boot of his car. He did not ask for permission. He did not wait for a record label. He built it from nothing in a city that gave him nothing. 3 years later, You Can't Touch This was everywhere. The album sold 10 million copies in the US alone. MC Hammer became the first rap artist to achieve diamond certification. At his peak, $33 million a year. A Saturday morning cartoon with his face on it. Sold out stadiums from Birmingham to Brisbane. From a housing project to the most recognized entertainer on the planet. In 5 years. And now I need to show you exactly where it went wrong. Because it did not go wrong the way you think. Here is what Hammer spent his money on. A $12 million mansion in Fremont, California. Recording studio inside. Regulation baseball diamond outside. Horse stables. Staff quarters. Monthly running costs estimated at $500,000 before a single employee was paid. 200 people on personal payroll. Not a business team. Not a management company. 200 people, childhood friends, family members, people from the neighborhood who needed jobs. 17 cars. An entertainment budget that burned through cash between tours. Now here is the question most people get wrong about this story. They ask, why did he spend so much? That is the wrong question. The right question is, what was the spending actually for? Because when you look at each item, really look, every single purchase was doing the same job. The mansion was not a home. It was a statement. I came from nothing and now I have this. The entourage was not a team. It was evidence. 200 people whose presence confirmed, every day, that MC Hammer was important enough to require them. The cars were not transport. They were language. Each one said something to the people watching. The spending was not about having things. It was about being seen to have things. And that distinction, that single distinction, is the difference between wealth and the performance of wealth. One of those builds. The other one burns. When the music industry shifted in the early 90s, when grunge replaced pop rap at the top of the charts, the $33 million started to fall. The performance did not stop. Could not stop. Because stopping would have meant admitting the show was over. So the spending continued on credit, on debt, on borrowed time. Until 1996, when the filing came, $13.7 million in debt. The mansion sold. The entourage gone. The cars auctioned. And now I want to introduce you to the man who saw this coming. Not in 1996. In 65 AD. Lucius Annaeus Seneca. Born around 4 BC. By his 40s, the most powerful man in Rome who did not sit on the throne. Personal advisor to the Emperor Nero. One of the wealthiest private individuals in the known world, with a Fortune historian's estimate at the equivalent of $500 million. Here is what makes Seneca unusual. He was not a philosopher who preached poverty. He was not a man who had nothing and told others to want nothing. He had everything. And he spent his life writing honestly about the traps that everything creates. In his letters to a friend named Lucilius, letters written in the final years of his life, knowing Nero would eventually have him killed, Seneca described a force he had watched destroy men richer than MC Hammer. He called it Ambitio, not ambition as we use that word today. Something more specific, more dangerous. Ambitio, the compulsion to be seen as successful. The psychological need to perform wealth for an audience. The deep, almost invisible drive to spend not because you want the thing, but because of the signal the thing sends to the people watching you. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has little who is poor, but the man who craves more." Read that one more time. He is not talking about income. He is not talking about savings rates or investment portfolios. He is saying, the most financially destructive force in human life is not poverty. It is the craving to appear wealthy to people who are doing exactly the same thing back at you. He watched Roman senators bankrupt their estates to throw banquets they would not remember, for guests who secretly could not afford to be there. He watched merchants sell property their grandfathers built, to fund one season of looking like they belonged among the elite. He called it a voluntary prison, not built by enemies, built by the prisoner, one expensive brick at a time. MC Hammer was not in ancient Rome, but Ambitio crossed 2,000 years without losing a single feature. Here is the Stoic verdict on MC Hammer's financial collapse. It was not greed. It was not recklessness. It was not bad financial advice, though there was plenty of that. The verdict is this: at every major spending decision in his peak years, Hammer was asking the wrong question. He was asking, what does this say about me? Seneca would have asked, what does this do for me? Those two questions look almost identical. They lead to completely different financial lives. What does this say about me is Ambitio. It produces spending that serves your audience, your neighborhood, your fans, your past, the version of yourself that grew up with nothing and needs the world to know that is no longer true. Produces the entourage, the mansion, the 17 cars. What does this do for me is the Stoic question. Does this asset generate income? Does this expense genuinely reduce friction in my actual life? Or am I paying for the story it tells? The $12 million mansion told a story. It consumed $500,000 a month. It did not generate a dollar. The 200-person payroll told a story. It did not build a business. It maintained an image. Hammer did not lose his money to bad luck. He redirected it consciously, one decision at a time, away from his future and toward his audience. The escape plan is not a budget.it is learning to hear the difference between those two questions before the money moves. Now, before you decide this is a story about a celebrity and has nothing to do with you, the last time you spent money on something you did not strictly need, what was the actual reason? Not the reason you told yourself. The real reason. Was it the new phone when the old one still worked because showing up somewhere with a 2-year-old model felt like showing up underprepared? Was it the holiday on the credit card? Not because you needed the rest, but because you needed something to say when someone asked what you did this summer? Was it the round of drinks for a table of people who did not ask you to, because being the person who picks up the bill felt like being the person who could? None of those are stupid decisions. None of them are shameful. They are human. Seneca was writing about this exact behavior in 65 AD, because it was destroying Roman finances the same way it is quietly working on yours. Here is what that looks like at scale right now. The average UK household carries over £2,000 in credit card debt. In Canada, over $4,000. In Australia, over $3,000. Most of that debt did not come from emergencies. It came from 1,000 small acts of ambitio, each one individually reasonable, collectively catastrophic. So here is the only practical tool Seneca gives you. Before any non-essential purchase, pause. Ask one question: is this for me? Or is this for my audience? You do not have to stop spending. Seneca himself was fabulously wealthy and saw no contradiction in that. This is not a prescription for poverty. It is a prescription for consciousness. For knowing, actually knowing, why money is moving before it moves. We started today in an empty mansion in California. We end in a study in ancient Rome. 2,000 years. Different worlds. Same prison. Seneca never saw a credit card. He never watched a status update get 100 likes. He never felt the pull of a buy now, pay later checkout. But he understood with perfect clarity the force that drives all of it. The prison is not built by your enemies. It is built by your own need to be seen. And the escape plan, the one he wrote down 2,000 years ago, is a single question asked honestly before every single time money moves. Is this for me? Or is this for my audience? The free Stoic Money Guide, all 7 of Seneca's principles in 2 pages, is in the description. 7 minutes. It may change how you look at your next bank statement. Comment below, when you look at your last 3 months of spending, honestly, what percentage was for you and what percentage was for your audience? I want to know. Next week, Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who actively tried to avoid becoming wealthy, and the counterintuitive lesson that built his fortune. Subscribe. You will not want to miss it.